Today I'm creating several wood nativity DIYs using Dollar Tree wood. I love how they all turned out, and I hope you do too. So let's get started. For the first DIY, I'll be using a couple of these 2x16" wood planks from Dollar Tree that I already had on hand. I'm using 2 planks because I want to glue them together to thicken them up. I'm applying wood glue along the outer edges and then a line of hot glue right down the center. The hot glue just helps hold everything in place while the wood glue dries. Once that's done, I clamp everything together nice and tight and then let it dry. I'll be trimming the wood next, and I'm just using my miter box and saw. I really like this one from Stanley because it has little pin slots that help hold the wood in place so it's not sliding around while you saw. I cut everything to different heights, and I'll pop the exact measurements on the screen for you. For the design, I'm using this nativity stencil set that I picked up from Amazon a while back. I decided to stencil each part of the scene onto its own block, and it's going to come together nicely. Since I glued the 2 pieces of wood together, I wanted the sides to be smooth, so I applied a little wood filler along the seams, then lightly sanded everything down once it dried. Of course, another quick option is to use a thicker and whiter wood block. Next, I'll be painting the wood blocks using the shade Khaki from Craftsmart. I love this color because it's neutral and it works really well with this nativity design. But you could also do black, gold, white, or even a bold berry red. I'm just brushing the paint on and making sure to cover the front, back, and sides until each block is fully covered. Once the paint was dry, I lightly sanded the edges of each block. This just softens everything up a bit and it gives the blocks a light distressed look without sanding through the paint. For the stenciling, I'm using black chalk paint. I'm starting with the manger and placing it on the smallest block, and then taping the stencils down to keep it from moving while I paint. I'm just using a little small sponge brush to apply it, and I'm applying it in light layers, making sure to remove any excess paint on the brush. Now, I didn't realize it at first, but the block was turned sideways instead of upright, but it still worked out just fine. After that, I moved on to stenciling Mary's silhouette on the second shortest block. Then I moved on to Joseph, and I'm using the second tallest block for his silhouette. And finally, I stenciled the star onto the tallest block so that it'll sit high and centered above the manger. I thought it'd be nice to add a base for the blocks, so I'm trimming this 1x2" wood from Dollar Tree down to about 6 3/4 inches. I painted it using that same khaki chalk paint, and then I lightly sanded the corners to match the blocks. I wanted to add some wording to the base, so I hopped on my Cricut and cut out "Oh Holy Night," and I'm placing this along the narrower side of the base. Of course, I accidentally placed it on the wider side at first, but I'm so glad I caught it in time before stenciling. So I just peeled it off and restuck it the correct way. Now, if you don't have a Cricut, no worries at all. You could also use letter stencils or rub-on transfers for the step, or you can get some paint markers and write it in yourself. Once everything has completely dried, I sealed everything with some clear wax from Waverly. And here it is, all done. And it's such a beautiful reminder of what we are celebrating at Christmas. For the next project, I'll be using a couple of these 2x16" wood planks from Dollar Tree. I'll also be using about 3 of these 7" rectangular wood planks from Dollar Tree as well. I'll be trimming the longer wood planks to create a nativity structure, and for a couple of the pieces, I'm cutting them at a 45-degree angle for the side supports. And it'll make more sense once I start putting everything together, but here are the measurements. For the 7-inch planks, which will be the base, I'm gluing 2 of them together just to thicken them up. This part is totally optional, but I used wood glue, ran a little hot glue along the edge to hold it in place, and then clamped everything together and let it dry for a bit. And doubling it up really did make a difference. I'll be staining all of the wood using Minwax Simply White in a semi-transparent finish. I added a few drops of pewter gray to slightly darken it. I definitely didn't want it to be pure white. Before I started staining, I marked the general areas where I knew I'd be gluing later on, just so I could leave those spots bare. For applying the stain, I'm using a sponge brush and working it right into the wood. I don't leave it on very long, but just enough to get the color where I want it, and then I go back in and wipe it down before it dries, and lets that wood grain still show through. Although for the base, I did give it several coats so that it's a bit more opaque. To build the roof, I'm adding a strip of glue along the edge of the 7¼ inch piece, and then adding the 7-inch piece to it at a 90-degree angle, basically forming an L shape. Next, I ran wood glue along the edges of the base where the side pieces will sit, and added glue to the flat edge of the 5-inch angled pieces. I also added a small drop of hot glue for a quick hold while the glue dried. I pressed each one onto the base with the angled edge facing outward, then used a few larger wood blocks to keep everything standing upright at a 90-degree angle. Next, to help support the structure, I'm taking another 7-inch plank and staining it to match. I'll be attaching this to the back. While that's drying, I'm adding glue along the angled edge of the wood and then setting the roof piece right on top. Before attaching that 7-inch plank, I thought it'd be nice to add some wording to it. So I hopped on my Cricut and cut out, "Oh, come let us adore him." This part is totally optional, but I thought it added such a special touch. I'll be stenciling the word in white, and I'm using a stencil brush and going over it in light, even coats. I like building the color up slowly instead of using too much paint at once. And then I just slowly remove the vinyl, and wow, this came out perfectly. Once that was done, I added wood glue along the back bottom edge of the structure, and then I attached the wording piece right into place. I'll be adding Mary, Joseph, and baby Jesus inside, and at first I thought about using wooden peg dolls since I had some already, but once I set them inside, they just felt a little too small. So instead, I decided to make my own using 3/4-inch wood dowels that I picked up at a hardware store. I cut one piece to about 3 3/4 inches and another to about 3½ inches for the bodies. I painted it first using a mix of Apple Barrel's Territorial Beige and Khaki, and thinned down with a little bit of water. Now I decided to give the smaller piece a light whitewash. I didn't want them to be the same, and I like that they were both a little different in shade. Once that was dried, I glued on these small round wood slices from Dollar Tree for the heads. You could also use large wood beads, but I didn't have any that felt right scale-wise with the bodies, and so the wood slices ended up being the perfect proportion, and I really liked it. For the baby, I glued a small wood bead onto a tumbling tower block, which worked perfectly size-wise. I'll be placing a piece of this burlap wired ribbon over Mary's head and wrapping the baby with this neutral fabric. So it did take me several tries before I liked the way it was wrapped, but once I liked the way it looked, I just added some hot glue to secure it all. Then I just attached the baby to Mary with some jute string wrapped around both, and that's it. This one is all finished, and I really love how this came together, and I'm definitely going to keep adding to it over time to complete the nativity. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a very Merry Christmas. Until next time, bye!